Social media influencers have various sources of income such as brand promotions and of course advertising share from platforms like YouTube. Now the entire receipt that they may get is not subject to tax. They're also allowed certain expenses to calculate their taxable profit. What kind of expenses are these? Firstly, these influencers would be spending on setting up their studio or office space where they do their recordings. Now, just for the aesthetics of the space, you might want a couch, a table, or anything else that would just spruce up the place to make it look presentable on camera, on screen. For that purpose, whatever fixed assets you purchase are allowed as expenditure. The entire amount you spend on the fixed asset would not be allowed as an expense in 1 year, in one go. Uh, it's only depreciation that is allowed. So for example, if you're spending 10,000 on a couch, say about 15% of it would be allowed in the first year, and so on and so forth over the life of that asset. These rates are defined under the Income Tax Act for various types of assets, and you should know these depreciation rates. Similarly, other kind of assets would be camera setup, your mobile phones, your laptops, even software is considered to be a capitalized fixed asset on which the entire expense may not really be allowed in one go if it's a one-time purchase of a software. Of course, if it's an annual SaaS-based subscription, the entire amount is allowed as an expense. Now, assets aside, there would also be certain expenses you would be incurring on an everyday basis annually. This would include, your taxi fare, your petrol expenses on traveling for business meetings. Even food and beverage expenses for business meetings are allowed as an expense. But of course, one should be a little prudent around how many of these F&B expenses would one want to show as business expense in the first place. Apart from that, you're spending money on telephone, you're spending money on internet. You could also be spending money on procuring goods that you review, which could also include clothes and other items of personal use. Now, one thumb rule to know of is that if you're earning an amount of X, up to 30% of X as your expenses is absolutely justifiable and shouldn't be too much of a problem. Of course, you should discuss this in detail with your chartered accountant. However, if a majority of your expenses are also in the form which could be easily attributable as personal expenses, such as money spent on your clothing, be a little prudent around it. You will have to devise a formula internally to say a certain percentage of the money spent on these items is of personal nature and the remaining is for business. Discuss it with your CA. Influencers can really save tax by certain tax planning tips.